Welcome back to HomeSpot, everyone. I hope everyone is having a great day today. I myself am having a pretty good day, other than it being a little hotter than what I would like for it to be. But nonetheless, today we are dabbling in epoxy. Specifically, this is going to be an epoxy charcuterie board, if I'm saying it correctly. Don't know if I am, so don't hate me for that. But essentially, this is just piece of wood, raw piece of wood. I'm lying to you. I cannot call this a raw piece of wood. Raw would be a tree in the backyard. So this is we'll call this an unfinished piece of wood, piece of lumber. We've already cut it down slightly to the rough shape that we want, but it's not square and it's not flat either. So first order of business, we need to run it through my planer. I am gonna have a planing sled. I don't have a joiner, unfortunately, but I'm gonna run it through my planer using a planer sled. And then I need to square off first the backside, then the edges. After that, we need to get rid of the remaining of this bark, and we should be good to go to start pouring epoxy. Again, I am not a professional at epoxy by any means. This will be my first attempt at this, so please do not follow me. I'm just kind of showing you, I'm an idiot with a YouTube channel, and I'm showing you what I'm doing here. So let's get to work. All right, so first up, you see how it wobbles right there? It's not supposed to be rocking, it's not supposed to be wobbling. So we need to take that wobble out. Now the way that I do it is I take a piece of MDF that I know is true dead flat, and I take some hot glue and just simply lift up the edge that's a little higher, and we're gonna hot glue it to it. Now this is gonna hold that piece of board at an exact angle while we run it through the planer. The planer will take that high spot out. Now if you notice on the left side, the piece of wood is actually a lot higher than it is on the right side, and it's very evident in this shot here. So we're running it through the planer, we're taking down the blades a little bit at a time, not even an eighth, about a 16th to a 32nd of an inch at a time. And we just run it through there until that top piece is dead flat, which you can actually already start to see that it's a whole lot flatter than when it started. Now once we know that one side is flat, we remove it from the board, we take the hot glue off, and we simply just run it the other way around in the planer to take out the bow on the opposite side. Okay, now that we know that our top and bottom are completely dead flat, now we need to work on the sides. We have 4 sides, the left, right, front, back. Now, in this case, the one on the right, we're not gonna touch. We're gonna leave that as a decorative piece, but the left, left, back, and front need to be perfectly flat and perfectly 90 degrees to one another. So I put the board on this jig here that holds it at an exact angle while I run it through my table saw, and just slice a piece right off. Now in this case, you can hold it at whatever angle that you want. In my case, I'm just trying to take off as little material as I possibly can. Okay, and as you can see, it's a perfectly straight cut compared to what used to be there. So now that we have that specific side completely straight, we can reference that side off the table saw crosscut sled, and we can just simply cut off a piece from the second side and from the third side. And that'll leave all 3 sides perfectly 90 degrees to each other. The 4th side, we'll get to that here in a second. We don't necessarily need to cut it, but we do need to clean it up. That way the epoxy can stick to it. Okay, and here's that 4th side. So that 4th side, this is where the bark was. Now, we need to clean it up. If we were to leave it like that, yes, the epoxy might stick for a little while, but it's not gonna leave a nice spawn. So we need to get it nice and smooth. All right, now to get ready for the epoxy. Now with the epoxy, you're essentially creating a bathtub for the board to sit in. Now you need to make sure that everything is sealed up, all the corners. and just simply lay your board on in there. Once you're happy with the fitment, it's time to move on over to mixing some epoxy. Now I've already mixed all of my epoxy, and it's mostly just like any other epoxy, 50% resin, 50% hardener. You mix it for a couple minutes. I also learned that you should really read the instructions on the epoxy. Apparently every epoxy is just a little bit different, and I can see why it does make sense. Now in my case, I wanted a royal blue, which is actually turning out really well. Now I also added in some silver glitter, if you want to say. Now the silver glitter didn't really take too well. The silver glitter actually kind of sank as it dried. And actually none of the silver glitter actually came out, just because I did have to plane the board one more time, and during the planing the silver pretty much went away. Now that's not too big of a deal. The board still came out very nice, a lot nicer than I was expecting it to. Honestly, I didn't have very high expectations, if I'm being very honest. Alright, once it's all set in, we literally just let it dry. Now, instructions say it has to dry for about 3 days, give or take, depending on how thick it is. In my case, we let it dry for about a week or so. I left it at my buddy's house, and once it was done, I went and picked it up, and this is what it looks like. Now, we still need to make it perfectly dead flat. It did curve out just a little bit, and we're going to use the same trick that we used in the beginning. We're going to lift up the high spots and run it through the planer once again. Now you're getting an excellent view of my lovely arm, I know that. As you can see, I've already flipped it on over. The top part is gonna look so much fresher here in a second. Now, whenever you're planing, don't make the mistake that I made. There is a ton of dust coming out. Turns out my vacuum was completely backed up and clogged up. So normally it's not this messy, and it is 100% my fault that it is. So make sure, double check your vacuum or your dust collection before you do any planing. Now that we have a nice flat board, we're on the home stretch now. So a lot of sanding here. Pretty much just going through the grits from, I started out at 120, finished at 320 grit. A little trick that I like to use, and I know I've mentioned it a few times in these YouTube videos, is just do some pencil marks. If you have some pencil marks and you sand them away, you know that you've sanded every piece, every inch of that board. If you still have, or if you still see the pencil marks, then you know you still need to sand a little bit more. Okay, in my case, I did have some pigtails in the resin. Now, pigtails are essentially just a scratch left behind from the sander, the random orbital sander, And in the way that I fixed it, I just simply used some 600 grit sandpaper, just a light sanding, and we're good to go. And then finally, time for some oil. We did use some Odie's oil from my buddy Marco here, and we used the sander. Now we're actually not putting any pressure on the sander itself, we're just letting it spin, and it's pretty much running under its own weight. We're just kind of guiding it to where we want to go. A couple coats of this, and we are set up and ready to go. And just like that, everyone, we are done with our latest creation, our epoxy charcuterie board. Now, we're probably not gonna use it as our charcuterie board. We're actually gonna use it as just a board to put a couple decorative pieces on top and just make it look nice overall, make it look nice and spiffy. Now, I just wanna give out a quick special thank you to my buddy Marco. He's kind of the one that guided me from, A all the way to Z, from raw board all the way to finished product. Now, as far as woodworking, I'd like to think I'm a half decent woodworker myself. I know that aspect of it. As far as the epoxy was brand new to me. And again, he walked me from A to Z on it. I think the thing that I found the most interesting was how to measure it out. And it's pretty simple. I just never really thought about it. I mean, you're really just measuring volume. You're measuring one side, the middle, and the right side. You're welcome to get a little more technical with it, but in this case, we just took 3 specific references, calculated the volume, and just did some quick math and got our volume, or got how much epoxy we needed to mix. As far as that, or after that I should say, it's really just up to your imagination as far as the colors you're gonna put in your epoxy. You can do honestly whatever you want. You can put stuff in them. I seen him do a board that had coffee beans in it, which was really cool. But nonetheless, this is just the first board, and hopefully plenty more to come. I had a blast. I hope you guys had a blast. Please browse the channel, like, subscribe. I will have another video for you right up here. We will catch you on next episode.